Hello, hello. Okay, let's talk about the introduction to DAOs here. Let me pull that up. Okay, grant writing. Where is it at? I think that's it right there. Yeah, there. Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk about DAOs here. Introduction. Okay, so this book is going to be talking about really the focus for grant writing is going to be education. We'll talk about some nonprofit, but really mainly education. And there's, even some educational districts or, even county offices of ed can have their own nonprofits within, which is the 501c3. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Grant writing as a leadership act, as systems, not transactions. And this is really the foundation for the course is going to be about the focus on education and the focus on leadership. Okay, so grants. What does it mean that they stay on the to do list? What this really means is there's never enough grants being written. This work never ends, but it's also work that nobody takes on because there's no amount. You can, and it's not guaranteed. Grant writing and the benefits of actually getting the grant are not guaranteed, and so it's very hard for districts and offices to really focus in on this or get somebody to focus in on the contracts and the work that I've done with districts and schools. Um, Usually, this is because there's nobody internal to do it, and so they hire external people. Uh, Training is not designed for schools in terms of grant writing. Nobody really trains to do it. You essentially have to really just get in there and do it. And leadership obviously feels very unsupported, but very responsible for writing grants to really advance their mission more than anything. Grants help advance the mission. Uh, all right. Why don't leaders write grants? It's time sensitive, right? Sometimes you got to drop absolutely everything and focus it on a grant. As I'm speaking to you, I have two grants due at the end of the month, so I'm beginning to stress out a little bit. I'm going to have to drop most of my responsibilities to really focus in and get some teams together to work on those. There's no guarantee of funding. You don't know if you're going to get it. You're competing with a lot of people, especially now with the federal government cutting so many federal grants. The competition has become much more intense. A lot of the training really focuses on nonprofits as opposed to education because those are really the essential organizations that actually require uh, uh, grant funding to survive, right? And so I'm working with one nonprofit right now that has cut their staff by more than 50% because really essentially the grants are running out and they're not renewing them at the level that they were before. And then there's sort of a lack of systems in place, people, teams that are going to really help to advance grant writing within the organization. Okay. Why do they matter? Supplemental revenue, of course, right? Who doesn't want more money? Whether with schools or school districts, there's really never enough money to do what you need to do. And I'm not talking about, pay raises or any of that because that's not usually what grants fund. Grants are going to fund things like the after school programs. Grants are going to fund like the community schools, those type of things, right? uh, and then also to be able to innovate beyond what you're already doing. If you're trying to do new programs, you're going to generally need some money to do that. And then the credibility of leadership, what does that mean? Is that uh, without additional funds, you actually aren't able to do much new things, and therefore it really takes a shot to your credibility a lot of the times. Okay. Grants position leaders as problem solvers, right? Because there's a problem to be solved. You write a grant and you're able to solve the problem, right? New programs solve problems, right? It builds credibility, of course. As you said, like I said, I've written 65 million in grants. Usually, when I have a sort of resume that shows that, people have faith in hiring me and knowing that I know what I'm doing. In fact, I generally, when I'm working on big grants, I won't work with anybody who's, written less than 15 or 20 million successfully in grants, because it doesn't show to me that they have the experience to be able to, be able to produce those large grants, particularly the federal and sometimes the state. And then also strengthens advocacy for whatever it is that you're doing within your school or district. Okay. Grants and grant money are always, well, not always, but mostly should be tied to your vision and your mission, right? The vision piece, right? Grant writers aren't going to give you money unless you have a very clear vision of what you want to do with it. So if you don't, generally a grant is going to help you clarify what that is. What is your vision? What are your goals? How is this going to be translated into the plan that you have to achieve those, to advance that vision, and then to be able to communicate purpose not only to the people that you're writing the grant for, but the people that you're asking money from as well. Okay. It provides opportunity for collaboration across organizations. Maybe 70-75% of the grants that I write, I think about, okay, there's another organization that we need to team up with, another school district. Sometimes, organizations need to find school districts and vice versa. Sometimes school districts or schools need to find organizations, particularly when we're talking about like the community school grants. But collaborations, a lot of times in the grants, when they say, that they're going to favor collaborations, those are usually not the time to go out and seek collaborations. Generally, you want to have those collaborations established well before that time. There's shared ownership. When you have, partners in grants, there's many people not only within the school district but also in the community that are responsible to, achieving a particular joint purpose, and then also expanding your impact beyond just the school to maybe perhaps the community and beyond. Okay. There's opportunity for outreach. You have, shared school success stories. You increase visibility through new programs, which require funding. And then you discover partnerships in the process, right? You build confidence. You reinforce your purpose because you have to write it and articulate it down. And then also, there's also professional satisfaction in knowing, hey, you were responsible for bringing, your district or your school or your organization an extra, million or 2 million, or heck, even 50,000 if it's your first grant. Okay. So the author has about, the person we're going to be reading has about 20 years of experience writing grants in education, as a founder, as a director, and also reviewing federal grants. And interestingly enough, this is very similar to my experience. I have about 20 years or so, probably a little bit more in working on grants, right? And as the years gone by, I've expanded in terms of working with larger teams and working on larger grants. I'm not a founder or a director, but I do work with a lot of people that have these positions. And I have not been a federal grant reviewer, but I have been a state grant reviewer and for many different organizations. This book's going to be for administrators, board members, teacher leaders, aspiring leaders, or really just, let's add another one, interested students. Interested students that maybe just want to learn and understand the world of grant writing. Okay. We're going to expect sort of vision-driven grants is what we're going to be talking about. Connecting your grants to sustainable systems, and then aligning your grants through to the leadership that already exists. Okay. These are the 5 chapters that we're going to be reading in this book. It's called Envision, Establish, Engage, Execute, and Extend. And those have a lot to do with what aspect of the grant we're going to be looking at. Do we first have to envision, what are we writing this grant for? Establish, putting together the teams, the infrastructure to be able to do it, engaging with the right teams, the right people, the right leaders, executing, which actually writing the grant, and extending, perhaps, getting an extension on your grant or getting a similar grant once the grant is over. Okay. So there it is. Envision, developing, you're aligning your vision with your mission. Establish is making your school grant ready, or district or organization. Engage is building partners. Execute is preparing and submitting the proposals, which we will all do in this class by the time this class is over. And extending, building long-term funding pipelines. Okay. And when I say preparing and submit proposals, be mindful that you can also work in teams. You don't have to work individually. If there are anybody in the class that want to work with other people in the class, all you have to do is let me know. Okay. All right. These are the resources we're going to talk about later on in the book. And the next chapter will talk about vision and then purpose. Okay. Thank you very much.